There are truths woven into the fabric of what you perceive, truths rarely acknowledged. Welcome to the Charon Files. The stories you are about to hear are testimonies from living witnesses of what moves beyond understanding, of what refuses to be explained. Each of them stood at the edge of what is known and looked into what lies beyond it. My name is Charon, Ferryman of the Dead, the one who waits at that edge. What follows is what they brought back. May they prepare you for your own future encounters. The boundaries of what you accept as reality are often far more permeable than you can comprehend. There are moments when the familiar simply dissolves, giving way to an inexplicable alteration, a sudden, jarring shift that defies all logical explanation. These are not mere anomalies, but rather glimpses into the intricate, fluid nature of existence itself, where the established order momentarily unravels. What you perceive as solid truth can, in an instant, reveal itself to be merely one possibility among countless others, leaving behind an unsettling awareness of the vast, unseen currents that constantly reshape your world. It is in these profound ruptures that the true fragility of your understanding is laid bare. As we learned, in episode 2, Kevin in Cahokia, Illinois, recounted a series of unsettling auditory events, footsteps, distinct knocking, and clothes rustling, all occurring while he was alone. We now turn to Brian in Davidson, North Carolina.
I believe in the paranormal, parallel universes, and things like that, but there was one incident that I simply couldn't find any explanation for. So here's what happened. My family and I were relaxing at home. We have a pool and dogs. For context, the pool is about 31 inches high, and one of our dogs is a dachshund. As usual, we were all sitting in the pool. It was a hot day, we were talking, and the dog was walking around the yard, just doing his own thing. We have a private house with a fenced yard. Also, we were all sober. About 10 minutes passed while we were talking, and then I suddenly saw our dog come back completely soaking wet, as if someone had dipped him into the pool. Water was dripping from his ears. We all jumped out of the pool and started checking him, and he was completely soaked. We all looked at each other because none of us could come up with any logical explanation. The first thing we did was run into the house to check if maybe a pipe had burst somewhere. But no, everything was dry. The patio was dry. Literally everything around the house was dry. It was as if the dog had simply disappeared and then came back soaking wet. Of course, we didn't actually see where he was during that time, but let me explain that our dachshund could squeeze through. The utility hatch is locked with bolts. We don't have automatic sprinklers. The fences are high. Nobody could have sprayed him with water. We were all sitting in the pool the entire time. There was nobody else at home. We were sitting there in complete shock. How did our dog suddenly come back completely soaked? Normally, when we put him in the pool ourselves, he comes out happy and starts rubbing himself dry. But this time, he wasn't himself at all. He just stood there looking at us with the strangest expression. You know, it almost looked like he was thinking, "Wait, were you all here just a second ago?" I honestly don't know how to explain it.
Episode 6 introduced us to Anthony in Everett, Washington, who shared a harrowing account of dying multiple times and experiencing himself as a ball of light flying through a dark tunnel. This is Kyle in South Plainfield, New Jersey.
When I was in my early 20s, I was on an ATV with my two older sisters, one 15 and the other 18. We were going to my grandma's, which was about 1.25 miles away from my parents' place. We were traveling through our fields, but on the way I suggested we go around the fence so we didn't have to open the gates. It was pretty much the same path, just a bit off to the side we had gates, because this was our pasture for the cows. As we get to the middle of the field, we all notice something sitting on top the hill we were about to climb. On top this hill, we had a somewhat big pile of rocks from working the fields a long time ago. We slowed to a crawl because it looked human. We thought maybe a calf fell and was stuck. Or maybe it was my uncle who looked after the cattle. But this thing was sitting weird, basically like how Spider-Man perches over buildings, crouched down on top a rock. As we were sitting there trying to figure out what we were seeing, this thing slowly stood up and my heart sank. Its arms were long, grossly long. I screamed to stop and instantly jumped from the front of the ATV to the driver, replacing my sister. As we were switching, this thing started running at us, but it was running weird. Its arms were swaying back and forth like normal runner, but because of how long the arms were, it looked weird. You would think it would run on the long arms, but it didn't. It was running fast. I turned around and shot off straight through the field. My sisters were screaming it was still coming, but I honestly could not look back at this thing. I just said, don't look at it. We rounded the corner, and that's the last we seen it. After that corner, it's trails to my parents' house. As we got home, I crashed the ATV into the deck, trying to get in as fast as we could. We were so scared my parents actually believed us. They called all the family to warn if it was a trespasser. They said nobody's seen anything or anyone in the fields. It was tall, skinny, and wore no clothes. Just a body is what we could see, grayish color, and small. We were about 100 to 130 feet from this thing. It was during the day, too. Happened in Alberta.
Returning, briefly, to episode 12, Rebecca in Massachusetts described a sudden and terrifying transformation during her morning drive. We now hear from Stephen in Marion, Indiana.
When I was younger, I was a very sick child. Constantly in and out of hospital. At 2.5, I contracted pertussis encephalopathy, basically an infection to the brain. I was having seizure after seizure. My siblings were brought in to say goodbye to me before I was being transported to another hospital. They were told they'd never see me again. On the way in the ambulance, my heart stopped 3 times. The third, they thought they'd lost me but managed to bring me back after a few minutes. My parents were told I had a 50-50 chance, but that if I lived, I'd be in a vegetative state. I was neither and managed to come out of it absolutely fine. The doctor said they never saw someone come out of what I did, and to this day talk about it when I see them. Fast forward to when I was 3, fully recovered, and we as a family were going through family photos. I pointed out one of my grandmother, who died years before I was born, and said, "There's Nanny Collins." My family was shocked, because there were no photos of her around the house, and I had never been shown one. There was no way I knew what she looked like. Curious, they asked me, "How do you know that?" And I replied, "I was up in her house playing with Anne." They asked, "My cousin Annie, who's my age?" I told them, "No, not Annie, Anne." At this point, they were freaked out. My cousin Annie is named after her Aunt Anne, who died when she was 1.5 years. There is no way I knew about this because she died 30 years before this incident. Then I said the thing that struck them most. I told them, I was playing with Anne and her toys, but Nanny Collins told me I had to go home to Mummy and Daddy, that I wasn't ready to stay here yet. I truly believe I died, went to whatever kind of afterlife there is, but my grandmother saved me. It explains how I came out of what I did when my chances were literally death or living dead. For a few years after this, I still spoke of my Nanny Collins and told my family that whenever I was sad, she would come and cheer me up. I would go to her grave and talk to her like we were having conversations. Then one day, I told them that she said I didn't need her anymore, and after that day I never spoke of her again. I truly believe my nanny was there for me through my tough childhood years. I sadly don't remember these things because I suspect she stopped showing to me when I was old enough to remember. I wish I did remember, but all my family members do. Even my aunts and uncles talk about this and how I spoke about her all the time. Nanny Collins, thank you for saving my life.
These testimonies reveal how easily the fabric of what you perceive as tangible reality can unravel, leaving behind an unsettling echo of the impossible. The names of the witnesses have been changed to maintain anonymity. If what you have heard tonight mirrors something you have experienced, leave your story in a comment below and we will include it in a future episode. Don't forget to subscribe. You wouldn't want to miss